Shimmerglisten. Noah stared at the great curving arch. Above his head the Wanderer gazed down at him, mocking him and his failures, it seemed. His strength was exhausted. He and the other magicians would need a good night's rest before they could continue. He briefly contemplated using their precious stocks of crystal mana to conjure a chamber of Pallas that would allow them to keep searching for the missing conjunction, but he knew it would be pointless. They weren't failing to find the conjunction because they'd missed something. They were failing because it wasn't there. Of course, everyone knew that conjunctions could and often did move. Sometimes they waxed or waned in size. Sometimes they would move a day earlier or later. Sometimes, very rarely, the destination of a conjunction might even move by a few miles or more. To ensure they delivered the best information to the Empire's heroes meant the prognosticators had to check and recheck the conjunctions regularly. Otherwise, something might be missed. Or, as in this case, go missing. The conjunction to Hotter's Mire had been one of the larger ones he'd seen. Large enough for 90 people to travel, it should have taken them just outside the palisade wall of the newly established Fenny settlement of Hotter's Mire in Liathavan. It offered the tantalizing potential to disrupt the plans of the Empire's enemies, the Heirs of Terrunil, stopping them from allying with the Fenny and breaking the curse the Empire had put on the territory. Everything was all set. And now, it wasn't there. It just wasn't there. They'd searched every possibility, and they'd keep searching, but Noah was certain of it now. The conjunction to Hotter's Mire was gone. It had been there, it had been part of the Empire's great destiny, and now it wasn't. That could only mean one thing. Something, someone, had changed fate. Overview. On the run-up to the spring equinox, Imperial spies operating from Liathavan brought back information about the situation there. They discovered that the Fenny were in advanced negotiations with the Heirs of Terrunil. The heirs were offering to help the Fenny break the dreadful winter curse wither the seed that hangs over the territory, smothering the life from it. The Fenny want to have children, something the curse makes very difficult, while the heirs most likely just wanted to free the Valorn from the curse's grip. There is a tiny window of opportunity to stop the heirs before they can put their plan into action. A chance for elite military units to slip into Liathavan, surround Hotter's Mire and wait for the heirs to arrive to do the ritual. Once they turn up in force, the Empire can attack, wipe the settlement out and end the threat the heirs pose for a generation. The plan is simple. All it needs to succeed is to make absolutely sure that nobody gives the game away to the Fenny. Giving the game away to the Fenny. A massive military force of Navarre Thorns, accompanied by scores of Marcher beaters and a smattering of allies from Dawn, Highguard, Wintermark, and the Brass Coast, creeps stealthily over the border into Liathavan. With skills honed through the years, the Navarre and their allies creep silently through the woods until they are in position surrounding Hotter's Mire. It is an extraordinary feat, one no army could ever hope to replicate, and it takes weeks to complete. Units have to move in small numbers, finding spots to hide in the dangerous forest. It's only possible at all due to the coordination provided by the spy network and the ability of the Empire's elite military units to move independently of each other. The risks are high. A single mistake could give the Empire's plans away to the Fenny and the heirs, but everyone plays their part to perfection. So it is with some considerable surprise, a few days before the attack is due to begin, the Empire's elite military forces discover that the Fenny are out looking for them. Something, someone, has tipped them off. There are dangerous moments of panic, but they quickly give way to confusion as the Fenny indicate they know the Empire are there, and that they have not come to fight, but to talk. The Fenny have a letter warning them of an incipient attack on Hotter's Mire, and signed by 3 Imperial citizens: Wat of Lambrook, Imperial Advisor for the Fenny, Travid Longest Path, Senator for Terrunil, and Taru, General of the Blackthorns, have all put their names, signatures, and titles to the letter to the Fenny. They write warning them that Imperial scouts will be re-entering Liathavan to stop the reversal of the curse and to stop anyone responsible for this threat. In all likelihood, this will mean the fall of Hotter's Mire. A surprising development. The Payne are clearly not pleased to discover that Hottersmeyer has been surrounded and threatened with destruction, but in the spirit of dialogue created by the Wat's letter, they ask the Empire's representatives to sit down with them and talk. Since the element of surprise is gone, there seems to be little reason not to take the offer, and in a bizarre turn of events, a sit-down meal is soon being readied. The leader of the Payne is a nondescript-looking woman called Urhelin. Dressed in the simple garments of the Payne, she bears no evidence of her seniority or authority, but she is apparently the most skilled mage among the Payne in the territory, and that makes her the leader. Those who talk with Urhelin quickly discover that there is more to her than it appears. She may be ignorant of much of imperial life, but she is shrewd and thoughtful and careful with her words. She is frank that the Payne have little affection for the so-called heirs of Terrunil. How could they? The Payne loathe Terrunil. The Empire enslaved the gods and then killed them when they had no more secrets left to share. The Payne were less than slaves, treated like animals. They escaped Terrunil when the Valorn emerged from the land of rivers and rain to destroy everything in its path. The very last thing the Payne want to do is cooperate with a group who call themselves the Heirs of Terrunil. The Heirs of Terrunil's offer to show them how to live with the Valorn does not impress Urhelin one iota. She has seen how they live, a pathetic, primitive existence with no homes or camps. She frequently refers to the heirs as animals who have learned to talk, in tones that make her contempt for them plain. But they were desperate and out of choices. The curse that lingers over the land, the one the heirs claim the Empire put there, has rendered their people infertile. Such a curse can be endured for seasons, but not for years. Life here is bleak and without any hope of a future. Either the Payne find a way to break the curse, or they must flee these rich, fertile forests and return to the open lands where the Orcs and the Empire harass and attack them. They would do anything to break the curse, even consider allying with the hated Terrunil. Otherwise their attempt to build a life here will be for nothing. They know that breaking the curse will allow the Valorn to become more active. Urhelin does not hate or fear the Valorn. Her people call it the rain that washed the world clean. In their eyes, the Valorn was a flood that swept Terrunil away, freeing the Payne in the process. But they are not fools. They understand that the Valorn is a terrible danger. They know the risks they take living so close to the edge of its territory. But better to risk death and have hope of a life than to wither to nothing without hope. The dialogue is guarded but respectful, and at the end of that fateful meeting, Urhelin makes an offer to the Empire. The Payne will not give them away to the heirs. They will tell them they are ready to do the ritual now, and when the heirs come to Hottersmeyer to help the Payne break the curse, the Empire can attack them and slaughter every one they can catch. So long as no members of the Payne are harmed, Urhelin and her people will not lift a finger to stop the Empire wiping out the heirs. A quick battle. The Empire have assembled a significant force of military units with an effective strength of just over 10,000, enough to destroy Hottersmeyer and overpower a large fighting force of Payne. The heirs of Terrunil, by comparison, bring just 90 people to Hottersmeyer. Given the odds, it's not really fair to call it a fight, it's more like a massacre. Still, not everything goes the Empire's way. Druss, the leader of the heirs, is surprisingly spry for a man of his age, and is away like a startled cat at the first sign of trouble. If the Empire had sent more military units, they would have had enough to catch him. As it is, he only just slips through the fingers of the circling forces, and one particular dedicated band of Navarre chase him all the way back to the very edge of the heart of the Valorn. Most of the rest of them are not so fortunate, and they quickly get what they deserve. Every single one of the survivors from the cabal of the Green Mother who arrives at Hottersmeyer is cut down. They have with them some great tree herald creature that lashes out with mighty branch-like fists, before it goes down under a hail of blows surrounded by a score of Navarre warriors. The children of Yornagra do a little better, and several of them manage to make a break for it, but a hail of arrows from a contingent of marchers ensures only one is able to get away. Within an hour, the heirs of Terrunil are no more. A handful manage to flee back towards the Valorn, mostly Navarre, but the number includes a few Varushkans and an Urizeni, so it seems unlikely that Druss can perform a ritual of any great magnitude with the forces he has left. All that remains now is to deal with Drustan, the leader of the heirs of Terrunil, and the source of so much misery. A slow aftermath. The Payne of Hottersmeyer give warning to the Empire that they intend to seize control of Liavan's Glen. Henceforth, the ambassador to the Payne, Wat of Lambrook, should send any communication by winged messenger to Urhelin of Hottersmeyer. Urhelin is sending 2 representatives to Anvil to discuss how to end the curse on Liathavan with the Navarre. They expect to arrive on the final day of the summit. After the fighting is over, Urhelin asks the Empire to withdraw. She pointedly reminds them that the Payne have kept their word and allowed the Empire to destroy the heirs of Terrunil. Now she wants them to keep their word and leave the Payne be. She informs the Empire that the Payne intend to lay claim to Liavan's Glen, seizing it by force. She expresses her earnest wish that the Empire not take this as a provocation, but she is clear that they will not be dissuaded. This is their home now, and they mean to lay claim to the whole region. She also asks that Wat of Lambrook be informed that if he has any further messages for the Payne from the woods that fell, or for any other group of Payne living in Liathavan or the west, then he send those messages by winged messenger to Urhelin of Hottersmeyer. Whatever his past crimes, his involvement in the butchery of Alderley, Wat has earned the right to speak with the Payne as an equal. Henceforth, if he wishes to speak with the Payne, then he will send his message directly to Urhelin. Finally, she mentions that the Payne are still eager to see the curse broken. If the Navarre are genuine about wanting to lift the baleful magic from Liathavan, then Urhelin will send a pair of Payne to speak with the Vates at Anvil to discuss what might be done. The Payne possess allies who might be prepared to assist with lifting the curse, which is why the heirs sought their help. A change of heart. The Navarre can pass a mandate that will create new opportunities for interactions with the Payne, at the cost of having less opportunities to investigate the past. We, the Navarre National Assembly, refute the claims that the followers of Yornagra are the heirs of Terrunil. Terrunil is dead, and all that is left is ashes and ruins. Navarre herself saw no purpose in bringing that failed empire back. We remind our nation that these cultists are simply that, cultists. Iniska Ashwood, Navarre Assembly, Spring Equinox 384 YE, upheld with a greater majority, 188 to 10. Iniska Ashwood raised a judgment in the Navarre Assembly condemning the heirs of Terrunil as nothing but foolish cultists. The judgment passed with a greater majority and made clear that Terrunil, the ancient civilization from which all Navarre are descended, is dead, leaving nothing but ashes and ruins. The judgment strongly condemns the heirs, but it could also be interpreted to condemn Terrunil itself. Such a condemnation is not uncontentious. More than a few Navarre believe that the great purpose of their nation has always been the restoration of the Terrunil Empire. Isn't that why they support the Empire? As the best mechanism by which the Valorn might be rolled back and civilization rebuilt. Others are more sanguine, accepting that Terrunil had many failings, and that it was undone by mistakes of its own making. They are prepared to accept that the Navarre should move on from their past, that the empire they are part of now is something new, and that they should embrace that future and let the past go. The Assembly could clarify whether it is their intent to encourage the Navarre to abandon the legacy of Terrunil and move on by passing a suitable judgment. An obsession with our past will only blind us to the potential of our future. We send named priest with 50 doses of Lao to encourage every Navarre to abandon all thought of Terrunil. We are the Navarre, and the Empire is our home. Synod Mandate, Navarre. If this mandate is passed, then henceforth the Navarre will pay less attention to the mistakes of the past. They will be less obsessed with what happened at the fall of Terrunil, clear about the failings of that nation, and no longer think of themselves as its descendants and inheritors. The oaths of Navarre and Thorn will still bind the Navarre to their great sacrifice, to destroy the Valorn and end its threat together. but henceforth they will look around them for allies in the present, rather than looking backwards for the mistakes of the past. It is clear that such a mandate will endear the Navarre to the Feni. There are scattered bands of Feni spread throughout the west and north of the Empire. There is at least one large group in Hacinia. According to Urhelin, all the Feni view Terrunil as a great evil that the world was better off without. If the Navarre turn away from their history and distance themselves from the legacy of Terrunil, then there will be less opportunities for the Navarre to research the histories of the past, but more chances for potential cooperation between the Feni and the Navarre and any opportunities that might bring. It will also influence those Navarre with an interest in history, such as those Fintan Nighthaven sought to address with their statement of principle. Rather than seeking out antiques, relics, and heirlooms that connect with Terrunil and the Valorn, they will focus their attention on the heroes of the Navarre, especially those heroes who strove to build and maintain the Empire. Any Navarre can submit an alternative mandate, but the civil service are keen to point out that any mandate that attempts to engender positive opportunities from improved diplomacy with the Feni, without sacrificing opportunities to delve further into Terrunil's past, will not succeed. A lurking horror. The Valorn-spawn force in Liathavan has an effective strength of up to 15,000 if it emerged and attacked a neighbouring region. The forces of the Valorn are continually replenished by the magic that sustains it. Its strength would be 10 times that figure if the Empire attacked a region of the Valorn in Liathavan that hadn't been suitably weakened first. After the discussions with the Feni are complete, most Imperial forces opt to withdraw. Any risk of a ritual to break the Wither the Seed curse that weakens the Valorn in Liathavan is ended, and with it the source of that threat, the heirs themselves. Druss remains an issue, of course, but he is just one man now. He can be dealt with next time he dares to leave the heart of the forest. What has not been dealt with is the Valorn itself. A lurking horror, the heart of the forest beats with supernatural life that destroys anything sent against it. When they were here last season, the Empire estimated the enemy's effective military strength at a mere 15,000, and some hotheads have suggested that such a force could easily be overcome. Wiser heads, those who have fought the Valorn before and understand the nature of the enemy, are not so easily fooled. The danger of the Valorn lies not in its numbers, but in the speed with which it can replenish that strength. If the Empire attacked the Valorn in Liathavan, it might well be like fighting a campaign against an enemy with only 15,000 husks and other monsters. But that figure represents the limit of the strength that the Valorn can exert if it strikes out from its heart. If something, such as the heirs, caused the Valorn to become active and its creatures to issue forth, then the Empire would be faced with a military force roughly equal to 3 armies that they would need to stop. But if the Navarre were brave enough to attack the Valorn in the heart of its strength, they would take terrible casualties from the miasma, while the strength of the Valorn would be continually and eternally replenished. If the Empire were fighting the servants of the Valorn in territory affected by the Valorn curse, then every creature they struck down would be replaced within hours. The only way the Navarre have ever found to take a region from the Valorn is to weaken the magic that sustains the Valorn. Traditionally, that has been done using the power of the Trods, draining spring magic away from the hearts until the curse can no longer maintain itself. When that happens, the magic tends to retrench like a wilting plant that has been cut back. Then the Navarre can strike, and they and their allies can drive the Valorn spawn from the area. The only other time the Navarre have had success has been when the heirs have provoked the Valorn to expand. Ironically, this does seem to make the Valorn more vulnerable. The more waves of Valorn spawn that issue forth from the heart, the less life what remains has to sustain itself. When the Empire has been able to fend off the attacks of the Valorn spawn, then there has been a brief window of opportunity during which the weakest region of the Valorn heart becomes vulnerable and can be reclaimed. Estimates of the Valorn's strength are important in allowing the Navarre to assess what threat might issue forth, but they don't begin to define the horror that would happen if the Valorn were attacked while it was not vulnerable. The only way to attack the Valorn that has any possibility of success is to act when it is clear that region in question no longer provides the Valorn spawn with near constant regeneration. To attack at any other times is to invite certain disaster.